Sure. Let's let Howard respond to that. Howard,
Sure.
Your comments.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good and insightful comment. My response would be, I did not want to remake my life. I was 38 years old. I was a tenured college professor, sort of pretty committed and established to my career as an artist and an art teacher. And as a consequence, I had to change everything, including my work and everything. And I thought a lot about whether my brain had manufactured my experience, whether it had been generated out of my own, history, or whether it had come outside of myself. And I thought about that for weeks and months. A couple of the things that convinced me that I had not manufactured one was I got a tremendous amount of information that was never part of my background,
Such as?
Theological understanding and things like that, things about the future and stuff. That all took place and all happened. But the thing that was the most convincing of all for me was the visitations of the angels and of Jesus and their intervention in my life. And these things happened while I was wide awake and sober, and no drugs, no alcohol. And they kept visiting me and talking to me and trying to convince me and help me through my thing. So it got to the point where I couldn't possibly deny the reality of the experience.
This is after that initial encounter, you mean?
Yes.
What did you mean about the future, that you said you saw things happening in the future that came true?
Well, like one of the things I had a huge argument with Jesus about was the Cold War and the Iron Curtain and the communist empire and the Soviet Union and stuff like that. And I told Jesus that I thought there was going to be a nuclear exchange and stuff like that. And he said this was in '85, and he said, no. Matter of fact, in a few years, the Cold War is going to be over, and there's going to be no nuclear exchange. As a matter of fact, Russia is no longer going to be communist, and it's all going to happen almost without any bloodshed whatsoever. I actually told Jesus he was crazy. I am the guy that told Jesus he was crazy.
Wow.
Because I couldn't conceive of how that all would change in a few years, because my reality growing up, I'm a baby boomer, was the Cold War, and a mutual assured destruction, MAD, was the official policy of the United States and the Soviet Union.
You just to go back really quick, you said you were an atheist. You said like you didn't pray and you didn't do any of that stuff. Did you actively think about it, or was it just, oh, I didn't care about religion, or were you actually like an outright atheist, I guess?
A woman whom I knew brought her brother who wanted to be a priest to me so that I could talk him out of going into the priesthood, because I thought it would be such like a total waste of a life to engage in a religious vocation as a lifetime. I was an active, vocal atheist, hostile to religion and to the Christian faith in particular.
Gentlemen, we are done with our first segment, so we're going to go ahead and take a break and then pick up right at this very spot. Okay, this is Rick Davis.
This is Aaron Edwards.
And you're listening to AM 700 KSCV The Voice. This is The Things That Matter Most, and we will be back in just a minute. Okay, we're back. This is Rick Davis.
This is Aaron Edwards.
And you're listening to The Things That Matter Most, the show where we talk about things everyone's passionate about, but that matter a whole lot more than sports or politics. And we are part of the way through a very interesting interview today with a couple of gentlemen that we've had on the show before. We have with us again today Howard Storm, who is telling us the story that he had about a near-death experience that ended up transforming his life. And we also, and let me add parenthetically, a former atheist converted by his experience. And we also have with us Hemant Mehta, a man that we've had with us on the show before, who is a current atheist and actually a pretty well-recognized guy in atheist circles, at least in America, perhaps around the world. And we've had Hemant with us before, and we thought it would be interesting to have both of these gentlemen back with us here today to talk to each other, because they share the common past that they were both atheists. The difference here is that Howard had an experience that made him change his views, and Hemant still is persuaded by the atheist point of view. And so we're part of the way through a very interesting dialogue between these gentlemen, and let's move on. I'd like to examine another aspect of this, and that is that Howard claims that one of the features of his experience that validates that it was true is that he came back to life having learned the same theology that he didn't know before he died, but that he later found in the Bible after his return. Now,
which theology was that?
Okay, Howard, could you just talk a little bit more about that? Then I'd love to hear Hemet's comments on that.
Right. Like, for example, let me give you a specific example. I asked Jesus questions about him and the Bible. I mean, I'm talking to Jesus, asking him about, what's the stuff about the Bible. And he said that there's so much more that he did in the world that he said all the books in the world couldn't actually contain all the things that he did. I'm like, whoa, cool, awesome. And later, when this is, weeks later, because I was very sick for a long time, wasn't even able to read or see or anything, but when I started reading the Bible and I read that Jesus used almost those exact same words in the Bible, or those same words were used in the Bible to describe Jesus' activity in this world, that all the books in the world couldn't contain it. It's like, whoa, that's what he said to me. Unbelievable,
So, Howard, is it your claim that you came back from this experience with, what, a complete theology, or small pieces of theology that you ended up finding were true? What exactly is your claim?
No, I think it was a real strong systematic theology that, frankly, later on I went to seminary, which was a graduate program, 3.5 years of seminary, and it's worked. I mean, my systematic theology that they gave me has worked all the way through seminary. Worked really well. I got A+ in systematic theology.
Okay. Now, Hemet,
well, I'm hearing that, and I'm thinking just, the whole idea that Jesus did a lot more than what's written in the Bible, because it couldn't contain it, that the whole John 3:16 stuff, that stuff I've heard. That stuff I learned about, for a long time, I've known about for a long time, and Howard, being a professor, must have encountered that at some point as well, even though he may not have believed it, and I don't believe it. But you've heard that before. I think that's common knowledge growing up, especially if you're interested in religion from any angle. And so the fact that you're hearing those things while you may not have, accepted them before, I don't think it's as surprising to, hear that sort of stuff in this vision.
Howard?
Okay, let me tell you, Hemet, something. That what I believed in was I believed in drug, sex, rock and roll, and pleasure. And you know what? Basically, the euphoria that I would have liked to have had, I didn't get. The gratification and sensation that I believed in and that I lived my life for, I didn't get. So I was, I played a real great trick on myself, because what I did believe in, what I did know, what I professed, and what I lived my life, I didn't get. And instead, I got something that I had no knowledge of. I know you keep prescribing that I knew all this stuff beforehand, but I didn't. And so it's kind
of you, but you must have heard it.
I did not know Christian theology before this experience, and you're going to have to take that at face value, because I'm stating that. I did not believe in Christianity, and I did not want to change my life. So what the heck happened to me? You can call it anything you want, but something happened that sure had a profound effect on me.
And, again, I'm not calling Howard a liar at all. I just think that, as a professor, he must have encountered the words at some point. I find it hard to believe you could ignore it, because it's everywhere.
Can I make a clarification here without taking sides, because I think I understand your disconnect. I think what Howard is saying is he came back with a fairly complete, systematic theology that might take the fair amount of a seminary-style education to understand. He's not saying he never saw the term John 3:16. He's not saying that he never heard anyone say that Jesus will save you from your sins. His point is that unless he is not remembering correctly what he was like before the experience, or unless he were not being truthful, he's saying that he had a fairly complete theology like someone who had maybe been a Christian for 15 or 20 years. So I think that's where you guys are disconnecting. Hammett, you're saying, well, you must have heard of John 3:16 and that Jesus saved people from their sins. And Howard, I'm not sure you would deny that somewhere in the depths of your childhood you might have